ended up in Hollywood doing a big gala dinner at this tiny restaurant, but with a big, giant outside. And so they had a ton of people there. And I come around the corner and drop the lasagna, the whole pan on the ground, bam! And so the chef is screaming at me like Hell's Kitchen times 2, right?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Sean Ireton with the Nuinspiration Extraordinary Gentlemen podcast. Today, I have on the show a very special guest by the name of Rick Boxeth, and he's a culinary whiz kid, if you will. His company is called Catered Courses, and I actually met Chef Rick when I was doing some research online, trying to find a chef to be on the show, and he's one of the people that came up through BNI, which is Business Network International. It's an organization I was a part of for some time, and I found Chef Rick online there and reached out to him, and he was probably one of the coolest dudes that I ever talked to because he was just super chill on the phone, and we had a good conversation there, and just let him know that I wanted a chef on my podcast to talk about some different tips and insights and stuff like that for you, my listeners. And we met up for coffee after that, and we had a really great conversation with what was supposed to be an hour turned into 2, and we didn't even realize it until those 2 hours were up. Just a really great guy. And what I learned about Chef Rick was that he's been a chef for almost 31 years. He received his culinary certification from the American Culinary Federation. He is a certified culinarian. He's legit. He's the real deal. And like I said, he's a private chef, and he teaches cooking at companies like Hulu. And he also does more private events and things like that. So he's got some really cool stuff to talk about. And I think there's going to be a lot of value for him to share here for you guys. And he's on the show because he wants to teach some simple, practical tips and ideas for you men to use every single day. So thank you for coming on the show, Rick. I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thank you for the intro.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was nodding my head over here. Yep, that's me. So I started off in high school, actually. It was a ROP program, so regional occupation program called Chefs of the World. And it was one of those where they just did like an introduction to culinary. And we ended up in Hollywood, and I was born and raised in West Covina. So ended up in Hollywood doing a big gala dinner at this tiny restaurant, but with a big, giant outside. And so they had a ton of people there. And I come around the corner and drop the lasagna, the whole pan on the ground, bam! And so the chef is screaming at me like Hell's Kitchen times 2, right? And then my teacher comes around, don't ever yell at my student, right? So it was a moment that was very stressful, very intense. And then we all looked at each other and went, okay, there's lasagna still in the pan. How many have we served? Who's left to serve? Can we cut the rest in half? What are we going to do? And that was the addiction for me. I went, oh my God, this is intense, right? The intensity of it was just awesome. So from there, I went to culinary school in Santa Barbara and then did a 3-year apprenticeship at the Fess Parker's Red Line Resort there in Santa Barbara. And that was under the American Culinary Federation, where I did get my certification, also certificate from the program there. And then I went to New Orleans. Actually, at the time, I was just young and intense, and that intensity, over the years kind of goes away. But man, I called up Chef Kevin Graham at the Windsor Court and said, I'm coming to work for you. And he's like, who the hell are you? Right. And so I drove my 76 Opel for 4 days and stayed at KOA's on the way and ended up getting there in my Chef Whites with my tools ready to go and put me on the line, worked there. Then I ended up back in Hollywood with Michelle Richard, where that's when I really got into the fine dining and all the French hardcore stuff. And then Michelle one day said, you're going to France to work with Marc Manu. And I got to go to France and train in a 4 Michelin star restaurant. And that was totally intense. So that's kind of, that's my culinary story up to the point. And then kids got out, that kind of stuff for a while. And then for a while, like 12 years, and then ended up doing a lot of cool stuff where I was able to have a residual income and be a kid scoutmaster, climb Mount Whitney, all that kind of cool stuff. And then just 5 years ago, it was like, Dad, it's time to do what you love again, and so that's when I started catering courses, and here we are.
Nice. How old were you when you went to France?
France, I was 22.
And how long were you there for?
3 months.
3 months.
3 months of just intensity, very intense.
What was your craziest story when you were in France?
Man, a lot of crazy stories in France. So two little things. So one was where we come into the break room and there's always champagne. For whatever reason, bottles of empty, like open champagne. So everybody would just be drinking champagne. And it was more like where all the apprentices went on break. And then there was cheese in the middle of the table, and you would cut into it in the morning, and then it would just ooze out. So in the afternoon, you come back and you just kind of pick your cheese up with your bread off the table. And then the other thing was whenever you left, they would grab you by your arms and legs and toss you into the stream that ran underneath the restaurant. So that was an interesting thing. And then, there's a bunch of stories I could go on. The April Fool's Day there is really intense. So they move somebody's car to the other side of the road, and they just stuff like that. They really take April Fool's Day serious. So
what was the thing about throwing you into a stream? Why did that happen? It's
kind of your exit. If you're leaving the restaurant, like you're done, they toss you in the stream. It was just what they did. Yeah.
Why is that a tradition? Why do they do that?
I don't even know. It's just cold. I mean, the water's cold. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing from France that I'll never forget, and I told myself at the moment I would never forget, was the maitre d' at the restaurant invited me to his place, and it's a flat in a castle with the giant wood beams. It's beautiful. And we're sitting by this 6-foot gigantic fireplace, smoking a Cuban and drinking the finest port. And I said to myself right then, I will never forget this moment. And I haven't. It was such an experience.
That's cool. What restaurant was it that you were at in France?
It's called L'Espérance, and when I got there, I realized I knew nothing. It was so awesome. It was just amazing. I had to make pizza every Thursday because I was the stupid American that ate McDonald's and ate pizza, and that's all I knew. So I made pizza for everybody every Thursday. Big sheet pan. It was funny.
That's cool. So that was like your boot camp.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And what were your work hours like? What did you do on a daily basis?
It was really intense. So the way it works is you've got a lot of apprentices. We had 32 cooks for 100 diners, if you can imagine that. The kitchen bigger than the restaurant. It's massive, and it's divided into departments. And so where did all these people stay? We're in the middle of right near Dijon, in the middle of nowhere. So most of the apprentices stayed at this rat-infested hotel down the way, and they were really mad at me because I got to stay at the hotel. It was just beautiful, and right below the Basilique Sainte-Madeleine, but it wasn't like I was staying at the hotel. You would move this mop bucket and all the like maintenance stuff, open this little wooden door, and then I had this long bench with a mattress on it, a sink, and a window, and that was it. But it was It was like the luxury accommodation. So I would crawl out of there in the morning early, I don't know, 7, something like that. And then we'd get in there, and the crazy thing, we'd mop the floor. If you haven't even started yet and you mopped it last night, doesn't matter. You mop the floor first thing. Then we get started, do all the prep, and then mop the floor again, and then take your break, and then come back for lunch. Do the lunch, clean everything, mop the floor again, come back, prep for the afternoon, mop the floor again, and then we would do the dinner service, finish up, mop the floor again. So,
oh my gosh,
a very clean kitchen, and that was the day. I mean, it was 2 services, and it was from 7, 8 in the morning until 11 at night, depending upon the day. Sometimes service wasn't as full as like a weekend would be or something, but for the evening. But yeah, that was our typical day.
That's crazy. And you guys didn't have to like clean the restaurant part, right? Like was that just the wait staff and stuff like that, or do you guys take part in that as well?
No, just the kitchen, but the kitchen alone, I mean, was just beautiful, massive. Just picture lines of copper pots, beautifully polished, hanging above every station. It was gorgeous. It was pride, just absolute pride. In that, like when I put on my chef hat, and my shoulders go back, I stand up straight, and I put that hat on, and it's ready. It's time. It's time to get in that kitchen and make it happen.
Yeah. Very cool. And it was just mopping the floors for you? You didn't have to clean like the ovens and stuff like that? And the
No, we did everything. I mean, I think I just kind of used mop the floors as, the thing, because usually you clean the kitchen all the time. It's just part of what you do. But to actually just scrub and mop that floor is something you do, on a daily basis in a regular kitchen, not 4 or 5 times a day, but that's the way, that was it. It's over the top because it's a 4 Michelin star restaurant, and it's going to stay there. And there's only one way to stay. It's to always be on top.
So it's not an exaggeration when you watch a show like Hell's Kitchen and they punish the chefs to clean the kitchen, right? Like that's a pretty accurate representation.
So let's go back to the day, all right, when my first kitchen job back in West Covina at the Velvet Turtle. So I was hung over as could be. I was just, and they, oh, could you come in? Of course I could come in. I'm a brand new to the kitchen. I got to be there. So it turns out I had to clean the meat drawers because I was obviously hungover. So you take the drawers out and clean all this stuff that fell behind, and definitely punish for things done wrong, for being hungover, for anything you can. You definitely do that.
What was the struggle with the meat drawers?
Oh, it's just nasty back there, when you take everything out, if anything fell behind or anything like that, it's just not it doesn't smell good. There you go.
Yeah. Wow.
That was it.
So what were your, after you left that restaurant in France and everything like that, what was your next move?
So I was right back to Citrus where, Michelle sent me from, and that just in a different level at that point. I mean, I know when I think about it, 3 years would have been awesome, but 3 months was life changing. It really was. So especially in my culinary world, in my culinary experience. So I was able to jump into more of the management side and actually help out when Alain Giraud had left Citrus at the time, and I was able to kind of step into his position. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say that I was in his position because you're talking about a famous French chef, and I just don't see, what I mean? It's a respect, man. I mean, these guys are brilliant. And Michel himself would be, okay, I want the guest to experience this, whatever that is. And he would make that happen, and they would taste it, and he would be like, I know, I know, because that is exactly what I had planned for you. That exact moment, that when it hit your palate, when you went, whoa, whatever it was, he's like, I knew that was coming. And that's something that I think about today. Like, what is it going to be like on the fork? I'm always thinking about that when I'm cooking. It may be in the crudest form of a pasta, but it's not even cooked yet. But I'm thinking about how cooked does it need to be for when it leaves here, gets there, and gets into your mouth. It's just that whole. So yeah. So that was citrus.
How did he teach that process? Like, how was that? How was that something that you learned? Because obviously, with different industries, you can be taught certain things, and then there are other things that you just are innately good at that you just have to develop. What was the learning process in that phase of him teaching you the experience and reverse engineering the flavor profile on the fork and stuff like that? Like, how did that happen?
So that's just his kitchen. So it becomes what is that, like? Not lifestyle, but it's the heart of the kitchen is that, that when he's not there, you want it still to be continuing. So it's always that, would you put your name on that? If you wouldn't put your name on it, then it's not going out the window. Serious. Just, it's not. So it takes, so there's a bunch of eyes on every dish, especially in France when you had 32 cooks in the kitchen. Everything had just multiple parts. But so really having that work ethic, I guess that's taught to where you go. But then there's school too. So school, having gone to school and been blindfolded and had to figure out what herb is what by smell, things like that. Those kind of things help. So you already have your own kind of palate. And then him, Michelle, or Alon or Patrick at the time, they would always be there to taste and check. And, Michelle would do the old, just the French thing where he had his teeth through some things back then. But, if it's not the right flavor, it needs more salt, less salt. What were you thinking? Throw it away, that kind of thing.
So how do you refine that palate? Like, how do you get good at that blindfold test where you say, like, okay, this is chicken or this is duck? Like, how do you get better at that kind of that process? And then what are the biggest differences between cooks in France versus here in the States, especially California, because I know California is already super laid back with a lot of things. So I'm curious to see the juxtaposition between the cultures in culinary worlds.
Yeah, night and day. But yeah. So in response to the first question, I mean, you're talking about years. It's years. Like, you want to master something, it's 10,000 hours, right? I mean, it's just having the experience, being in the kitchen. Young chefs always need to, so say you want to be a big chef. Well, stay as low as you can for as long as you can is always the thing. Meaning, just go to different amazing kitchens. Don't be the chef. Just learn, absorb, and that learning process is, sometimes where they're yelling at you. So there was a day. So I went to Alon and I said, Michelle keeps yelling at me, and he says, do you notice how, if he yells at anyone else, you notice, no, he only yells at me. He goes, well, that tells you something, and it was, I mean, it, for me, I was like, yeah, it sucks to be yelled at and, the whole Hell's Kitchen thing. But at the same time, he was really on me to bring out what I could really do. And it shows today in my cooking. It absolutely does. I think about him when I'm whisking a sauce, I'm doing a figure eight with my whisk. And it's like, why are you doing a figure eight? Because if Michelle were alive, you'd come over here and kill me. Because it's in my brain, so that's that. And then as far as chefs here and chefs in France, that's a tough one. I mean, it's different. It's a whole different thing when you're young in France and you decide your career, because you have to decide your career at a certain age. Then if you choose culinary, you're in young and you're an apprentice. Like there were, of the 32 cooks, 20 of them were apprentices, maybe 15, something like that. So you're apprenticing in these places. Maybe that's why we mopped the floor all the time, because we had young apprentices to do it. But it was, So it's just different. It's a whole different thing. The way people treat chefs, the way, here it's more of a celebrity type of thing. There it's more of an honor and respect by going to their restaurant and being blown away. And people that have palates that understand that stuff. Some of the chefs here are pulling off some great things, and, people with a palate that doesn't understand it, it's hard, it's like your audience doesn't fit, so.
What was one of your biggest challenges coming up as a professional chef?
Just hanging in, man. It's intense. I mean, the hours are brutal, 16 hours a day, easy, back in Citrus, it was 7 days a week. Well, it was 6 days, I had Sunday off unless, something was going on, but, and that's hard on you, after a while, so the kitchen itself, biggest challenge was just to stay, to really realize that passion outwins an exhausted body, I guess.
Yeah. And what's your biggest challenge today with your business? Like, having thought about all the stuff that you'd been through before as a young chef and, coming up through the ranks, like, what's the biggest challenge today, right now, with everything that still, like, what's the biggest challenge?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I guess I don't even know. I mean, because it doesn't seem like a challenge. Everything is so. What I've created with catered courses is my playground, basically. So if someone wants, to have me come cook for them table side, the question is, well, what's your favorite meal? Where were you? Kind of get into their head and find out all that. And that's not a challenge. That's like super fun, So then I figure all that out and what they want me to do. And then then I get to get creative and come up with all the, so really, and then with produce and everything else, we can get any types of meats, any types, from all my different purveyors. So that's not a challenge anymore. You could really write a crazy menu and then, know that you have the stuff to, but mostly I would go with the seasonal, make sure we had, the freshes and all that stuff. But to, whatever was local and that kind of thing. So the challenge, I'm still trying to think of a challenge while I'm answering this, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's not too crazy right now, because I'm not coming up with a challenge. Sorry.
I mean, there has to be something, right? Like if there's like we were recently talking about your marketing efforts and stuff like that. I mean, that's certainly a challenge for you, but like, as far as being a chef is concerned, working with a team or doing the process of prepping for a big corporate buffet, right? Or something like that. There's got to be a challenge in there somewhere, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the numbers are a challenge, so if we're doing an event for 500, well, yeah, I mean, you're looking at the challenge of, but it's not a challenge. I mean, at that point, it's okay. How do we pull this off? And that's what drew me to the business in the first place. You know what I mean? So I guess what I don't see as a challenge is a challenge. So, the finding we need to rent a truck because you're talking about 500 people. We got multiple stations. We've got, whatever it is, we're going to need a sushi guy. We're going to need there's challenges in finding, but there's a lot of great talent, so I've found, and there's also the fact that food is food. I mean, when you get down to it, I mean, so you may grab like a tomato and like, I just want to smell that tomato, and it's different because there's a little more acid in it. It's a little sweeter than the other tomatoes that you had last week when you made that same sauce. So there's always those little things, but it's, I don't know. I mean, the people that I work with, my cooks, my staff, they're awesome. I mean, I treat them like that and they act like that, and I think that's kind of takes that challenge out, because we're looking for what is going to be on that fork. So we have this common goal of a satisfied customer, and that's, it takes all the blah, 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 whatever happens between us out of the equation, because, is that going to be good? Well, yeah. Okay. Then proceed. Right.
Right. Yeah. So the point of bringing that up is more so to provide a lesson. And what I'm hearing the lesson is that you should always have a great network of people that you can trust, vendor relationships. So always leverage your network to the best of your ability and make sure that everybody wins in the situation. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from that challenge. And how do you...
That's what I was trying to say.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Now, what does your network look like? Like, how do you find the right people to add value to what you're trying to do?
So I work with a couple other caterers that, because it's kind of like doctors with specialties, So I've got caterers call me and say, hey, I've got a customer whom I've done, some big parties for that wants a fine dining experience. Boom. That's me. I also go to them. Hey, we've got 500. Can you help me out? Of course. And then their staff as well. Like I'll go to other kitchens and work with their staff, and vice versa. I'll have them go, hey, can you make 200 mini beef Wellingtons for us? And it's actually, well, I won't share my recipe, but I'll share the end product.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So but it's funny because I see my stuff on other caterers' menus now that I know well, and vice versa. But, I've taken a few things from them, and they know, and we talk about it. So I think that, like, in order to have a good network, just have a good attitude. And that's, I think, how it works. When I'm in a pinch, which borrowing chafing dishes, stuff like that, I mean, come through, like, no problem. Come get them when you need them. And the same thing here. I'll even drive it over and drop it for you. Because there's enough business for everyone, and sometimes, it's a good way to be.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So now with your career and everything, there's so much food on these like corporate catering menus that you've got. There's just a ton of food. How do you prepare for those like large scale catering events?
I just go for it. I mean, so it's just a different scale, instead of making one pan, you're making two. Instead of having one giant roasting pan, you're making 10, whatever. You just up the numbers, obviously, for more people. And then the challenge is on location. So you figure out if there's ovens or what they have in their kitchen. And then sometimes we even rent stuff, and we'll end up renting ovens and building like an outdoor kitchen, depending upon the size. But then you can actually take it further back and think about all that stuff and kind of take the challenge out of it again, because I like taking challenges away, by creating a menu that fits where you're going to be and what you're going to do. So it would be like, okay, so if we have more cold appetizers, then those are out of the kitchen altogether. We can have all the cold stuff being done over there. And then if whatever hot stuff we have, we just figure, what kind of space we need, what can hold, what cannot, how early we can do it, that kind of stuff. And so that's usually how we do that. But then there's also the challenge of staff, because you've got a lot of people to serve. You need maybe 20 servers for 500, right? So you've got to go into that part. And what I've done in the past is actually hired another caterer to staff the event. So we did 220 people wedding, and they did the entire front of the house, had the exact style of their ties and everything they wanted. They even asked them to grow some beards for the bartenders and stuff like that. And so they were able to handle all that, and then I could focus on the food, which is where I excel. So.
Oh, okay, great. So there's a lot of adaptability here.
Yeah, and then show up and not have forgotten something, or always be prepared to you're only as good as your checklist. And there's sometimes when especially creating it new every time, when I'm doing so many different dishes and so many different styles of food, you've really got to have a good checklist to know what you're going to need.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a particular chef other than Michelle? Is there a particular chef that you admire the most? Who would that be, and why?
Chef I admire the most. Michelle. Yeah. I miss him. I miss him so much. But as far, there's chefs that come to mind that have their particular, their style, and I can picture their food more than I can picture them. Kevin Graham still, it's kind of like more chefs I've worked with, I think that have had an influence on me. I like Jamie Oliver, who's the Naked Chef. I admire him because he really put his career on the line when he went after the Los Angeles schools, and their lunch program. And, his food, before then has always been from the heart, that's why he's called the Naked Chef. He doesn't put a bunch of crap on it. It's not breaded and all that stuff. And I remember seeing something, I don't know if it was in a cookbook or what, but it was just that fish wrapped in paper and thrown in the coals, that's real. That's real food. I love that. So yeah. And then I guess because we have the celebrity status, he took his celebrity status and just went after the food program. And I think he's really brought in a lot of attention to it.
Yeah.
Which it needs, pizza.
Yeah. So what exactly was, for those of us who may be unfamiliar with what he was doing, what was going on in the school lunch program that he saw a problem with, and how did he solve that problem, or how did he kind of try to resolve it?
Yeah, so you could look it up for sure and check it out. It's really awesome. But he basically just was calling them out for what they're feeding the kids. Pizza with this super thick and crust and cheese and just the tomato sauce and not having any vegetables, anything like that, having high sugar drinks in all of the at the vending machines and stuff like that. Just basically looking at the obesity and then about, and everyday academic performance, all this stuff leads back to proper nutrition. So he basically started this campaign to go in and show them, like, there's one, he has a bucket of fat, just a bucket of fat. He's like, look at that. This is what's in there, kind of, because a lot of the labeling a lot of the companies that are putting, selling stuff to the schools and just they're not. There's a lot of things in there that don't need to be.
Yeah, gotcha. So I wanted to start to move to the tips and actionable insights that people can take. So I want to kick this off with one particular question that I had in mind, and that's in regards to fat and sodium. So fat and sodium tend to be a dietary problem for a lot of Americans, and a lot of Americans who want to stay particularly fit. Maybe there's some people with heart disease or other issues like that. What would you do to maintain flavor in a dish while reducing that fat and sodium content?
I mean, there's different herbs you can use. There's a salt-free, herb blend you can actually buy. So you kind of go to the herb side. You could also go to the vinegar side, where you have more of a lemony, the acid side, we would call it, where you'd have like a red wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, lemon, that kind of thing to really give it a zing without, having the salt. And then there's, cookbooks out there that, that are geared toward that stuff. And for me, gluten free, so my son, years ago broke out in hives when he had a flour thickened sauce. And so that really told us, he's got a crazy reaction to gluten. So we ended up going gluten free. And what it did is, donuts are made with flour. So those sugary, beautiful donuts, I can't eat them because they got gluten, right? So it's avoiding sugar, right? It's avoiding fat, but no, it's avoiding gluten, right? So it kind of changed the mindset. So avoiding gluten is avoiding bread, damn pizza, so gluten-free crust, so that kind of thing. So basically, for us at least, I mean, I'm the skinny chef you can trust. I don't eat gluten mostly. I mean, if I come across a good pain au chocolat, I mean, of course I'm going to cave. But
now, what is
besides
that?
that,
what is that?
It's a chocolate croissant.
Okay, because you're getting fancy on me. I didn't know what that was.
le pain au chocolat. Yeah, that's French for chocolate croissant. And in France, I mean, there's this weird layer of chocolate like spread in there that's just delicious. You can't beat it. So
yeah, something Nutella can't beat apparently for the rest of us Americans.
No. It's just different in the way their pastry. Well, number one is their products. I mean, they're starting with butter that's butter. It's bright yellow. Cream that they just leave out because it's got so much fat and it just stays. It's different start. Starting with the ingredients and those, like we talk about in our kitchen, the elements that make a dish, and sometimes you taste it, of course, but you don't even have to because you already know the right elements went in, and we know what we got.
Right. Right. So back to that, the healthy part of it. So, what are some recipes that you can kind of name off the back of your hand, right, of something that you've cooked that is lower in fat, sodium, and sugar, something that would normally be high in those ingredients, but you've kind of reduced that?
Well, I think it's more of an avoidance, so it's like we like to play with the classics, right? So we like to take like some of my mom's recipes actually and make them. And so we have I do what is that dish? It's actually a dessert. It's a pumpkin mousse. Okay. So you use like non-fat, what's it called? Condensed milk, the pumpkin puree, which is perfectly pumpkin puree. And then you can use a non-fat, non-dairy whipped cream type of thing for the whole. So that's a good one, and it's tasty and fluffy and light and lots of flavor because you put pumpkin pie spice in it as well. So that's one. As far as entrees go, Chicken, I love, so this will kind of address another thing I wanted to talk about, which was meals for the week. So chicken breasts, you basically take a bunch of chicken breasts and, you just salt, pepper them and throw them in the oven. And 25 minutes use your thermometer, make sure they're 160. And then you've got a nice chicken breast. I mean, I did say salt and pepper because my fingers were moving like in my little salt motion, because we salt and pepper everything. So in that case, you just go real light on the salt, or don't salt at all. You could just have a peppered chicken, and the chicken, it's still going to have a really good flavor. And then you make a really good dressing. Dressings are something to talk about because there's a lot of sugar in dressings, lots of sugar. I mean, one that I make has a couple tablespoons in its, my champagne vinaigrette. And, it doesn't kill you to leave it out, So making your own dressing and not putting sugar in it is a good way to do it. And then you have your high acid, your lemon, your, like I said, champagne vinegar, stuff like that. So it gives it really good flavor. And then you could dice up that chicken, put it in that dressing, throw it on a salad, voila.
Nice. So what are some dressing recipes that you could kind of quickly talk about? Because I know that there's some simple ones like cilantro lime dressings and stuff like that you can do really easily. But what are a few different dressings that you would recommend?
Well, one of the ones I love is my champagne vinaigrette, because it has shallots and garlic. So you just put a tablespoon of shallot and a teaspoon of garlic in your food processor, along with a half cup of champagne vinegar, and then a tablespoon of mustard, and then no sugar. And then you go ahead and that up. And then you drizzle in your oil, and you use a good canola oil, and then it becomes a great dressing. Real simple.
Sounds like those are some recipes that you're some ingredients that you can buy at a regular store too, right? You don't have to go to a specialty store for, at least for the champagne vinegar. I don't think I've ever looked for that, but
you could use a wine vinegar as well. Any kind of wine vinegar works, and you can find those anywhere. Champagne vinegar, there's a brand called O that I like, that is just really good. It just has a great flavor that comes through, and I think that's Whole Foods.
Okay, cool. So for the rest of these tips, now for single men, I wanted to help those guys out in particular. So what are a few recipes and some methods for those recipes? Maybe if you want to include like the tablespoon count or the cups or whatever measurements you need, just so that they can go back and reference this. So for cooking for themselves and cooking to impress a date, what are some few different things that they can do there?
Okay, so cooking for yourself, it's about what you have on hand. So I think you kind of got to have a well-stocked pantry. So you got to just have stuff in there, because you're on your way home and you're thinking, God, I got nothing at home. I'm just going to stop and eat Taco Bell. Oh, I said it. So instead, that, hey, I've got some deep set stuff at home. So maybe one day you were really like gung ho, and you decided you're going to cook some of those chicken breasts I told you about, and you have them in your freezer. Right. So you go, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have you pull it out, put it in the fridge. Next day you grab your chicken breast out, cut it up. And I mean, you could literally make anything with that. I mean, you could make a chicken salad, chicken tacos, in anything. There's a lot of ways to go with it. So as far as like the actual recipe, where I would more allude to like a cookbook, to some cookbooks and stuff. Then
I hear a banging sound.
It's my dog.
Oh, okay.
He was like,
yeah.
He's back to sleep. So as far as like a recipe, I come up with a lot of stuff off the top of my head, so again, it's kind of about having those ingredients in your fridge or in your pantry where you're able to grab and put something cool together. But to kind of, and then if I gave like one recipe, it's not really a sustainable thing. So I'd rather allude to like a couple cookbooks that I think makes sense. So one of them is called Saving Dinner. And I referred it to a friend of mine and said, well, our Saving Dinner book is thrashed. I mean, it is completely destroyed because it's full of, it's just been used, and it has some of my favorite recipes in it. And it's easy. It has a grocery list for Sunday and then food for an entire week. And it actually has for an entire year in this book. I turned a friend of mine onto it, like I said, and he went and found the Saving Dinner Basics or something. And his wife was like, oh, you mean you use a separate measuring cup for flour than you do for a liquid? So for me, I'm laughing, right? But no, I mean, everyone starts, and a lot of people don't. That's one of the things we have a hard. When I'm writing a recipe, I'm like, bah, and people are like, what does that mean? I like, just whisk it, fold it, and then spread it evenly and knock it on the counter. And, and they're just like, what are you talking about? It's simple. And I use the word simple too much. I know I do, because people go, what's simple about that? Well, it's simple to me, so basically a Saving Dinner is a good place to start, especially if you don't have any cooking experience at all. And I'm just saying this because our book is a disaster and we love it. And still, there's a Tuscan white bean and sausage soup in there that's amazing.
Cool.
And we use a chicken non-fat or a chicken sausage, so an Italian chicken sausage that's takes a lot of the fat out of it as well. So
for that cookbook, for example, for a collection of recipes, obviously cooking for themselves would be something where you don't necessarily have to go crazy. And if you're just cooking simple for yourself, like you don't have to do any kind of crazy recipes or anything like that. But if you're trying to impress a date, like what would be some simple recipes or more romantic kind of recipes that guys could use to impress their date or even impress their wife? What kind of things can they do there?
The romantic part is, I think, is the discovery. So first of all, you're going to ask her what she likes. You're going to really get into her, like, and women love that, right? So that's the big thing. You're going to cook for her from your heart, and you're going to cook what she wants. Oh my, I'm already getting goosebumps, right? I mean, that is intense, right? So so find out what she likes. Really pay attention. Take notes if you need to, because there's nothing worse than finding out what she likes and then putting what she doesn't like and putting it in the dish. You go, right. Oh, oops, because we're guys, right? So what you'll do is after that, you pretty much can figure it out. I mean, there's so many like videos and stuff online, but for me, so say she says, I like everything, right? There's always that, right? So you're like, great, that I've got it. So in this situation, which I think is where we're going, where we need to go, is, for me, I get all technical, I'm like, we're making a souffle, but we're talking about the average guy that just wants to make something. So you could, do, there's a lot of, Trader Joe's. I mean, I'm real, I would roll this up myself and all that. They have a pork roast that's stuffed with herbs and wrapped in bacon called pork cheddar. Okay, it is amazing. And you put it in the oven, you check the temperature, and you slice this thing, and it's gorgeous. So that's a good one. There's a lot of Trader Joe's has a lot of stuff that helps you along. You can get lobster and, things like that if you wanted to get crazy, and steaming a lobster is not as hard. Well, back in the day, we would have the apprentices steam or drop the lobsters, in the giant water. We would, Yeah, like whole live lobsters. And we would tell them to make sure they don't turn red, like, or orange, like they do. They change color. And they would be freaking out, oh my God, they turn red, So, yeah, lobster, it's always kind of that romantic thing, right? Shrimp are surprisingly easy to work with. You buy them peeled and deveined already, saute them up, have some pasta going. Not butter, once your shrimp are cooked in that, sauteed in that pan, then you put some butter in there, some herbs, and probably some parsley, some garlic, and then taste it, a little lemon juice, and then your pasta's ready, and put them together, and away you go. So things like that.
Very cool. Awesome. I think that covers it for most situations. But the next thing that I want to touch on is for the guys who have a family, right? So like how can they, with their wife or partner or whoever, how can they prep for cooking for their entire family?
Yeah, that's a good one. There's a Not Your Mother's. I'm remembering this one. Not Your Mother's Make Ahead and Freeze cookbook. So and think about it. Like, so I've got a lot of stuff on my mind that I can just I can pull out of my brain and make a dish and create and all that. But believe me, I've got a giant book that has all these things written down. In a lot of recipes I've found, a lot of things I've created, a lot of stuff. So when I keep referencing back to cookbooks, it's because that's what you more have to rely on at their stage, than I do. But for a family, saving dinner is made for the family of four. So when we talk about the guys who are maybe looking at saving dinner, learning the tips, they can cook it all and freeze half, that kind of thing. And then that one day when they're like, oh man, what am I going to eat? Oh yeah, I got that, chili in the freezer from, when I made it last week or a month ago or whatever. And then there's also a cookbook we use called Good Cheap Eats, which is exactly what it says. Good, cheap eats. But the way we do it now, so the family, you want to cook for, like, we're talking about like a week is what I'm thinking. So what we do is we actually write a menu. So we get out Good, Cheap Eats, Saving Dinner, whatever bar. We've got a bunch of cookbooks that we pull out and we go through them and go, oh, that looks good. Oh, let's do that. And then we get our menu written on a chalkboard, which hangs in the kitchen, which is funny, but it's there. And then we take all the recipes and go shopping. So that's on Sunday. And then during the week, whomever's here, there's another list that we have that'll tell like where it is. So we have GCE page 49. So if I look and I go, oh, black bean burgers, GCE page 49, and I open to page 49 and Good Cheap Eats, and there's the black bean burgers. And if I'm home, or my oldest is home and he wants to start dinner, he can pull out the recipe and know that all those ingredients are somewhere, whether the black beans cans in the pantry or the whatever it is, the jalapenos are in the refrigerator, that kind of thing.
Are there any particular websites that you'd recommend people visit for really good recipes?
One of the places that I get some good stuff from is Taste. It has just a bunch of recipes. And I go through like kind of the cookbook type of format is what I like, so there's the recipe, you can press print if you want it that way. And then there's also apps, like you were mentioning, apps that you could have on your phone and actually look up what ingredients you want. And then here comes your recipe. So yeah, it's getting, back in my day, there was no internet, there was no Google, there was a library. We had over 400 cookbooks. in our apartment. It took up half the apartment, but that's the way it was. And we would go and and I think that's why I remember a lot of recipes, because we didn't have Google. We couldn't just go look it up. We actually had to remember, or we had to go back to the book. So the brain was like, no, you don't want to go back and try to find that cookbook in 400. You want to remember this. So
got it.
Yeah.
Very cool. So to wrap things up here, I wanted to ask you a question about your image, and what is your image saying about you today?
I love that question. So I live in my chef white. So I'll go to my closet and, there's really not a lot of fashion in there, but there's my chef coats and my chef pants. And I think, what would be the most comfortable thing for me to wear today? My chef outfit. And I throw it on, and I actually go out into town wearing my chef coat and my chef pants, and I get in some great conversations. I, meet a lot of cool people. So and what it says about me is professional. It's also speaks a lot to my passion, because I love wearing my chef coat. I love cooking, so it's and then I've got my name, my crazy CR logo on the breast of my jacket. So I like that too. That says something about, people always know my name. I like that. And then, yeah.
That's awesome. It's kind of that falls within the subject matter I touched on in a previous podcast episode that I released about this concept known as enclothed cognition. And it was this idea, this theory that depending on what you're wearing, it can alter how you view yourself, as well as how other people view you and their opinions of you. And the way you're talking about your chef outfit plays directly into this whole idea of enclothed cognition. So depending on your industry, if you are a chef like Chef Rick, and you're putting your chef outfit on, that gives you a concept, a self-feeling of expertise. You feel like you really are the person who you are passionate about. And who you want to become and things like that. But if you're not a chef, if you're in a different industry like business or something like that, and you have to wear a suit, then you're going to feel the same kind of effect. You're going to feel more confident with who you are and what you do as a result. And it's just really interesting that you bring that aspect up with your chef outfit. So thank you for answering that question. But to start to wrap things up here, I wanted to acknowledge you for how unpretentious you are. And I mentioned that to you before, but just Chef Rick is probably the most personable guy that I've ever met. I've never met a chef before, but I just kind of feel like a lot of the chefs out there are pretentious. That's just my overgeneralization. And if you listeners have beef with that, let me know, and I'd be happy to hear what you have to say about it. But that's just kind of how I see the culinary world, is that there's a lot of pretentious chefs out there, but there's obviously a lot of really cool ones like Chef Rick. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on and providing your story and being generous with your time and sharing those insights and sharing those different cookbooks and stuff like that with these listeners, and being somebody that young chefs can look up to, as well as somebody that people in other industries can look at for inspiration. So thank you so much for coming on and providing all that information, Rick. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So where can people connect with you? You mentioned email is the best place. So what email address should people reach out to you on?
It's Chef Rick at cateredcourses.com.
Great. So Chef Rick at cateredcourses.com. You can also go to cateredcourses.com if you're interested in doing like a corporate event where you need somebody to come out and cater for your event. If you want to do a cooking class like what Hulu did. Yes, I said Hulu, the TV streaming service. That would be a great thing for Chef Rick to do for you. But cateredcourses.com has a contact form, so you can reach out to him there as well, and also look at his different menus he has. So Go check him out and give Chef Rick a shout if you have a question, or if you want to talk to him, reach out. He'd be happy to hear from you. I know at least he was happy to hear from me, and we had a good conversation. So thank you so much once again. Anything else that you want to comment on or leave with the listeners?
Nope. Hey, have a great day.
Okay, great. Awesome. I love it. Cool, man. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Nuinspiration Extraordinary Gentlemen podcast. If you enjoyed the content, give it a like, subscribe, and if you know someone who needs to hear this or wants to hear this, share it with them. Don't hold back. Let them hear it. And if you have any questions for me or my guest, we'd love to answer those questions for you. So shoot me a tweet, DM me on Instagram, leave a comment below on YouTube, or find me on Facebook. If you have Anchor FM, you can message me on my station. The username is @Nuinspiration, NUINSPIRATION. And as always, make the rest of today extraordinary, gentlemen.